The evening air was thick with summer heat as Officer Nathan Reeves rolled down a quiet stretch of Westwood Drive, the hum of his patrol car filling the silence. It was one of those nights where nothing seemed out of place. Porch lights flickered, families settled into their routines, and the occasional bark of a dog echoed through the suburban streets. He glanced at the dashboard clock, 9:12 p.m., another uneventful shift. These were the kind of nights that lulled officers into a rhythm of predictability, where the biggest problem was a broken taillight or a teenager testing the limits of a curfew. But Nathan knew better than to let his guard down. A flash of movement at the next intersection caught his attention. A black SUV rolled through a stop sign, barely slowing down before gliding onto the main road. Not a major offense, but still, a stop sign was a stop sign. Listeners, before we dive into the story, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Nathan sighed, reaching for the switch and activating his lights. The SUV hesitated before pulling onto the shoulder of the road, its engine idling softly. Nathan radioed in the stop. "Dispatch, this is Officer Reeves, performing a traffic stop on a black Chevrolet Tahoe, plate number 6 JXK 831. No assistance needed at this time." The response was immediate. "Copy that, Officer Reeves. Proceed with caution." He stepped out of his car, the pavement warm beneath his boots as he approached the driver's side. Years on the force had trained him to assess a vehicle in an instant. The SUV was clean, well-maintained, and carried a faint scent of air freshener that wafted through the open window. Behind the wheel sat a man, mid-40s, sharp features, and an unsettling calmness about him. He was dressed neatly, a button-down shirt and a silver watch that gleamed under the streetlights. Something about him felt too practiced, too polished for this time of night. "Good evening, sir," Nathan greeted, his voice steady. "You rolled through a stop sign back there. License and registration, please." The man smiled, an easy, rehearsed kind of smile. "Of course, officer. My apologies. Long day. Must have been distracted." Nathan watched as he reached into the glove compartment, retrieving the requested documents with calm efficiency. Too calm. Lucas Meyer. The name on the license matched the registration. The address listed was in a different county. Odd, but not illegal. Then Nathan's eyes drifted to the back seat. A young boy, no older than 10, sat rigid, his hands clutching the straps of a small backpack. His hair was neatly combed, his polo shirt buttoned all the way up, and his expression, too blank, too still. Nathan felt a flicker of something cold coil in his gut. "Hey, bud," he said, directing his attention to the boy. "You doing okay?" The boy's eyes darted to Lucas before quickly returning to his lap. Yes, sir," the boy mumbled. His voice was so quiet Nathan almost didn't hear it. Lucas chuckled lightly, shifting in his seat. "Sorry about him. My nephew Theo. Bit shy around strangers." Theo. Nathan tested the name in his mind, watching how the boy stiffened when Lucas spoke. Nathan nodded slowly. "Where are you two headed tonight?" Lucas answered easily. "Just heading home from my sister's. She had Theo for the weekend. I figured I'd pick him up late to avoid the traffic." It was a reasonable story, plausible, but Nathan's instincts were screaming. He glanced at Theo again, taking in the way the boy's fingers gripped the straps of his backpack, a silent anchor. His posture was too stiff, too scared. Nathan took a step back, pretending to study the license while his mind raced. He had no probable cause to hold them, no evidence of wrongdoing, but his gut told him that if he let this car drive away, something terrible would happen. Nathan made his decision. He tapped his radio. "Dispatch, I need a check on a Lucas Meyer. See if he has any connections to missing persons reports." Lucas shifted slightly. "Something wrong, officer?" Nathan smiled, though his grip on his flashlight tightened. "Just routine, sir. Give me a moment." The radio crackled a few seconds later. "Officer Reeves, we've got a hit. Lucas Meyer's name is flagged in connection to a missing child alert from Riverton. 10-year-old Theodore Dawson, reported missing 2 days ago by his mother." Nathan's blood turned to ice. He exhaled slowly, keeping his expression neutral as he flicked his gaze back to Lucas, whose calm mask hadn't cracked yet. "Step out of the vehicle, Mr. Meyer," Nathan ordered, his voice sharp now. Lucas blinked. "Excuse me?" Nathan reached for his holster. "Now." For a moment the street was silent. The air grew thicker, tension rolling in like an invisible wave. Then, Lucas moved. Nathan barely had time to react before the SUV's engine roared to life and tires screeched against the pavement. "Dispatch, suspect is fleeing southbound on Westwood. Possible child abduction in progress?" Nathan shouted as he sprinted back to his patrol car, adrenaline kicking into high gear. The chase was on. Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he floored the gas pedal, his patrol car surging forward in pursuit of the black SUV. Red and blue lights flashed against the darkened streets, illuminating the quiet suburb in frantic bursts. "Dispatch, suspect is fleeing southbound on Westwood, black Chevrolet Tahoe, license plate 6JXK831. Child abduction confirmed. Repeat, child abduction confirmed." "Copy that, Officer Reeves," came the dispatcher's quick response. "Units are en route. Maintain pursuit, but proceed with caution." Nathan's jaw clenched. He wasn't about to let caution slow him down, not when a terrified boy sat in the back seat of that vehicle. Lucas Meyer's SUV veered sharply onto a side street, tires screeching as he narrowly avoided clipping a parked car. Nathan followed, his foot pressing the accelerator harder, his siren wailing through the neighborhood. Houses and streetlights blurred past, and he could already see Lucas making a break for the highway. "Damn it!" Nathan grabbed the radio. "Suspect heading toward Route 12. If he hits the freeway, we're going to lose him. We're sending units to intercept. State Patrol is being notified." Nathan barely heard the response as Lucas ran a red light, speeding onto the freeway on-ramp. A car blared its horn, swerving to avoid a collision, but Lucas didn't slow down. Nathan gritted his teeth, following onto the freeway, weaving between lanes of late-night traffic. He knew he couldn't let this turn into a high-speed disaster, not with Theo in the car. Then he saw it. Lucas was weaving, his movements growing erratic. It wasn't just reckless driving. He was thinking, calculating. He's looking for an escape. Then, as if confirming Nathan's worst fears, Lucas suddenly jerked the wheel, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic before taking a sharp exit. "Dispatch, suspect is taking exit 17 onto Riverbend Parkway. He's heading toward the industrial district." Nathan recognized the area. The industrial zone was mostly abandoned at night. Long stretches of empty warehouses, closed businesses, and barely any streetlights. If Lucas was trying to disappear, this was the place to do it. Nathan pushed his car harder, the engine roaring as he closed the gap between them. Lucas was running out of road. Ahead, the SUV took a hard right onto a narrow alleyway between 2 old warehouses. Nathan reacted instantly, yanking the wheel and following. His headlights barely cut through the darkness, shadows twisting across rusted shipping containers and overgrown lots. Then Lucas made his move. The SUV skidded to a sudden stop, its tires kicking up dust and gravel. Before Nathan could process it, the driver's door flew open and Lucas bolted into the darkness. Nathan slammed on the brakes, his patrol car screeching to a halt. Theo was still in the car. For a split second, instinct warred with logic. Chase the suspect or secure the kid? There was no question. Nathan threw open his door, rushing toward the SUV with his gun drawn. "Theo, are you okay?" The boy was curled in the back seat, his face pale with fear, clutching his backpack against his chest. He didn't answer, just stared up at Nathan with wide, terrified eyes. "It's okay, buddy," Nathan said quickly, scanning the area for any sign of Lucas. "I'm here to get you out." The moment he reached for the door handle, bam! A shot rang out, the bullet slamming into the SUV's rear window. Glass shattered, raining down over the back seat. Nathan whipped around, heart hammering. Lucas wasn't running anymore. He was standing at the edge of the lot, gun in hand, his face twisted in frustration. "Walk away, officer," Lucas shouted. "This isn't your problem." Nathan slowly raised his free hand, keeping his gun steady with the other. "Put the weapon down, Lucas. It's over." "No," Lucas snarled. "You don't understand what's happening here. I'm not going to prison for this." Nathan's muscles coiled. The situation had shifted from a kidnapping to a standoff in seconds. His training kicked in, his voice remaining calm despite the adrenaline roaring through him. "Listen to me," Nathan said carefully. "There's a boy in that car. You don't want to make this worse. Walk away now, and nobody gets hurt." Lucas's grip on the gun tightened. He was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. Nathan knew he had seconds to act. His eyes flicked to the side of the SUV, where the broken glass glinted under the dim security light. If he could get Theo out of the vehicle while keeping Lucas talking, he might be able to end this without bloodshed. "You don't have a way out of this, Lucas," Nathan continued. "Drop the gun. Let's talk this through." Lucas's breathing was shallow, frantic, his eyes darting toward the alley behind him. He was searching for an escape. Nathan couldn't let that happen. "Theo," he said without breaking eye contact with Lucas, "I need you to stay very, very still, okay?" The boy nodded, his small hands trembling against the backpack. Then, in one fluid motion, Nathan moved. He dropped low, rolling behind the SUV as Lucas fired again, the shot missing by inches. The gunshot echoed, and before Lucas could recover, Nathan was up, aiming, firing. The bullet struck Lucas in the shoulder. He let out a strangled yell, his gun clattering to the pavement. He staggered, gripping his bleeding shoulder, his knees nearly buckling beneath him. Nathan didn't hesitate. "Down! Hands behind your head!" he barked, closing the distance in a flash. Lucas gritted his teeth, but he knew it was over. He collapsed onto his knees, blood staining his shirt as Nathan quickly secured the cuffs around his wrists. "Dispatch, suspect in custody. Send medical and backup to my location," Nathan said into his radio, breathless. Then he turned back toward the SUV, his pulse still hammering. Theo hadn't moved from the back seat. He was shaking, his tiny frame still curled against the door. Nathan exhaled, stepping forward and opening the door. The moment it swung open, Theo hesitated for just a second, then launched himself into Nathan's arms. The boy clung to him, his fingers gripping the fabric of Nathan's uniform like a lifeline. "It's okay, kiddo," Nathan murmured, holding him close. "You're safe now." The night was still around them, sirens finally piercing the air in the distance. But for now, Nathan focused on the only thing that mattered. Theo was going home. Nathan sat in the precinct's interview room, elbows resting on the metal table, his fingers lightly tapping the surface as he studied Lucas Meyer. The man was handcuffed, a fresh bandage wrapped around his gunshot wound. His once pristine shirt was stained with blood, his previous confidence shattered. Across the table, Detective Claire Lawson flipped through a case file, her sharp blue eyes scanning the reports. She had been called in once they realized this wasn't just a single case of abduction, but part of something bigger. Nathan could still hear Theo's voice in his head, the boy's hesitant words when he finally spoke at the station. "I don't know him. He said my mom sent him, but she didn't. He told me if I didn't listen, I'd never see her again." Lucas had posed as a distant uncle, gained the trust of a babysitter, and lured Theo away before anyone had realized what was happening. It was cold, calculated deception, and it made Nathan's stomach turn. Now he needed answers. "Let's start simple, Lucas," Claire said, her voice steady. "You abducted Theo Dawson." "Why?" Lucas let out a slow breath, his lips twitching slightly. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Nathan clenched his jaw. "Try us." Lucas's eyes flicked toward him. "You really think this is just about me?" He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You have no idea what you just walked into." Nathan exchanged a glance with Claire. "Then why don't you enlighten us?" Claire said, leaning forward. Lucas shifted, wincing slightly at the pain in his shoulder, but his expression remained disturbingly calm. "I was just following orders." Nathan stiffened. That wasn't the answer he had expected. "Orders from who?" Lucas let out another humorless chuckle. "You're already too deep, Officer Reeves. You think stopping me ended it? I was just the pickup guy." Nathan felt the back of his neck prickle. He had been in law enforcement long enough to know when someone wasn't bluffing. This wasn't just one abduction. It was a piece of something much larger. Claire remained unfazed. "Then let's talk about who's giving you orders." Lucas tilted his head, studying her. "I tell you what, get me a deal, and maybe I'll start talking." Nathan exhaled sharply. "A deal? You kidnapped a 10-year-old kid, put a gun on an officer, and you think you're in a position to negotiate?" Lucas smirked. "You'll want what I know, because Theo wasn't supposed to be the only kid taken this week." The air in the room turned cold. Nathan's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" Lucas leaned in slightly, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "There's another one. A girl. If you don't act fast, you won't find her in time." Nathan's blood ran cold. Claire snapped the file shut. "Who? Where?" Lucas only smiled, sitting back against his chair. "Like I said, get me a deal." Nathan's hands curled into fists under the table. They didn't have time for deals. There was another child at risk. Claire pushed back from the table, motioning for Nathan to follow her out of the room. The moment the door shut behind them, Nathan let out a frustrated breath. "We don't have time for his games." Claire's face was tight with contained fury. "I know, but if he's telling the truth, we're running out of time. We need to find out who else is involved before another kid disappears." Nathan exhaled, pressing his hands to his hips. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Nathan stormed down the precinct hallway, his mind racing. A second child. That changed everything. If Lucas Meyer was telling the truth, it meant another abduction was in motion, and time was running out. Detective Claire Lawson matched his pace, her jaw tight. "If we wait on a deal, we could lose valuable time. But if we push him too hard, he might shut down completely." Nathan's frustration burned. "Screw his deal. We need to move now." They reached the bullpen, where Sergeant Daniel Graves, their commanding officer, was already waiting. "Tell me you've got something solid," Graves said, folding his arms. Nathan filled him in, his voice sharp. "Meyer claims there's another child in danger. He won't give details unless we cut him a deal." Graves swore under his breath. "We can't play that game. If there's another kid out there, we act first." Nathan nodded. "We need to start with Meyer's known contacts. If he was just the pickup guy, someone else is running the operation." Claire tapped on her tablet, pulling up Meyer's call history. "We already ran his phone records. There were several calls made within the last 48 hours to an unlisted burner phone. Whoever he was working with is covering their tracks." Nathan clenched his jaw. "Then we start digging. Who does Meyer know that would be involved in something like this?" "We've got a name," Claire said, flipping through the files. "Garrett Holt, convicted of fraud, suspected in child exploitation cases, but never charged. He's been off the radar for over a year. Nathan's stomach churned. Where was he last seen? A storage facility on the outskirts of the city, under a fake business name. Nathan didn't hesitate. Let's go. Graves nodded. Take a tactical team. We're not taking chances. The warehouse raid. The convoy of squad cars moved silently through the darkened streets, blue and red lights flashing only in muted pulses to avoid attention. Nathan gripped the steering wheel, his pulse a steady drum. If they were right, a child's life depended on what they found at the storage facility. They reached the location, a rundown industrial warehouse, abandoned on paper but alive with secrets. Nathan and Claire exited their vehicles, joining the SWAT team that had already fanned out. No movement outside, one of the officers confirmed. Nathan exchanged a look with Claire. Then we go in. The team moved swiftly, stacking at the entrance. On Nathan's signal, the battering ram crashed into the metal door. Boom! The door burst open, and the team flooded inside. The interior was dark, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of chemicals. Stacks of crates lined the walls, and a row of dimly lit office spaces stood at the back. Nathan's flashlight swept across the room. Then, a noise, a faint, muffled whimper from somewhere inside. Nathan's breath hitched. He locked eyes with Claire. Over there, she whispered, pointing toward a locked side door. Nathan's heart pounded as he reached for the handle. Locked. Breach it, he ordered. The lock was shattered with a quick burst from the shotgun, and the door swung open. Inside, huddled in the corner, was a young girl. Tears streaked her dirt-smudged face, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Nathan immediately crouched, his voice soft. Hey, sweetheart, my name is Nathan. You're safe now. The girl flinched at first, her eyes darting between the officers. Then her lip trembled. I want my mom, she whispered. Nathan swallowed hard, his chest tightening. We're going to take you home, sweetheart. I promise. Everything seemed to slow down. Nathan's heart stopped as he watched Holt's body crumple to the floor, the gun falling from his grasp. The girl was still in the corner, untouched for now. Nathan reached for his radio. We need medical. Now! His voice was sharp with urgency as he moved toward the girl, who was crying silently in the corner. He crouched down to her level, his hands outstretched in reassurance. Hey, it's okay, Nathan said softly, his voice gentle. You're safe now. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide and unsure, but there was a flicker of relief in them. Are you going to take me home? Nathan smiled, his heart swelling with hope. Yes, sweetheart, you're going home. The next few days passed in a blur for Nathan. The arrest of Garrett Holt had made national headlines, but the battle was far from over. While the immediate danger had been stopped, the investigation into the trafficking network continued. The file Claire had shown him revealed a horrifying truth. Holt was part of a larger syndicate, and there were still many pieces left to uncover. The girl they had rescued, named Emma, had been taken from her home just a few days before Holt's arrest. She was one of many victims, each with their own story of fear, isolation, and manipulation. But for now she was safe, and that was enough. Nathan sat in his office late into the night, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. He had been in law enforcement long enough to know that this job didn't end when the cameras stopped flashing or when the media moved on. There was always more work to do. The door to his office creaked open, and Claire stepped in, holding a fresh file. She looked exhausted but determined. Got some new intel, she said, sitting down across from him. We've tracked some of Holt's contacts. There's still a network out there. We're not done yet. Nathan nodded, rubbing his eyes. I know, but we're getting closer. The sound of his phone buzzing on the desk made him look up. It was a text from his partner, Jenna. Theo's parents called. They want to thank you. They're going to send a letter. Nathan smiled faintly, his heart lighter than it had been in days. Maybe we've made a difference, he murmured. Claire gave him a small smile. You did, Nathan. And this is just the beginning. As the weight of the case settled in his chest, Nathan knew she was right. This fight wasn't over. But as long as there were officers like him, willing to stand up, no matter the odds, the children would be safe. And that was what mattered most. The future was uncertain, but Nathan Reeves was ready to face it, one step at a time. Listeners, like this video, subscribe to the channel,